Warning: these social media platforms may be hazardous to your health. Censorship kills. Pain coming. This has been a PSA by Breaking Spectre. Well, good morning, everybody. How we doing? Spectre here. It is the 8th day of November, cruising right along through the old fall time here. Hopefully you guys are doing well. Hopefully you guys had a good weekend. Fairly good weather through the middle part of the country here. Looks like we're going to be in for a fairly good day here. Sunny. Pretty seasonable temperatures, mid 60s here where I'm at least, and hopefully you guys see similar weather. On the broadcast here this morning, we got a lot of ground to cover. We're going to talk a little bit about, markets, of course. We're going to talk about what's going on with port congestion. A little bit about what's going on with Evergrande. And, let's see, a little bit of rebellion brewing against the old global elites, things of that nature, and a couple other odds and ends. So stick around. We'll be right back. Hey everybody, Spectre here. I want to tell you about my Teespring store that I just opened up with a handful of products in that for you guys, the listeners, the audience, those that are in chat on a day in, day out basis. Always appreciate your support, and I figured what the heck, we'll throw some merch out there for you guys. And so obviously with YouTube and nerd shenanigans as of late, I'm going to be looking to expand to other platforms, and well, that all comes at a cost, so I figured what the heck. That being said, I got some t-shirts and that out here. You can see those in black, white, and gray. Spectre Does News. We got a water tumbler, 20 ounce there. Got a coffee mug you can get in black or white. And of course, we got the Let's Go Brandon #FJB shirt, which you can also find in black, white, or gray. Right now, you can find that all over at https specters-storefront.creator-spring.com. That's https://specters-storefront.creator-spring.com. Thank you for your support. Well, as mentioned, weather-wise, not a lot of activity across the old U.S. of A here today by way of the radar. Do have a couple of storms that are now named over on the Pacific side. They spun up over the last week and are now named. We can definitely see Sandra and now Terry down here, down off of Mexico and down towards Central America. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. But otherwise, fairly good day in store here across the old USA. Aside from that, futures rebound from overnight Tesla weakness as key CPI print looms. U.S. futures rebounded from a modest overnight sell-off as big industrial firms were supported by Friday's passage of a $1 trillion infrastructure bill, while Tesla fell on Elon Musk's plan to sell about a tenth of his stake after an impromptu Twitter poll suggested he should do what he likely already planned to do anyway. Oil, Bitcoin, and Treasury yields all rose while the dollar fell, and at 7:45 a.m. Eastern, Dow E-minis were up 64 points or 0.2%, S&P 500 E-minis were up 1.5 points or 0.03%, and NASDAQ 100 E-minis were down 1.25 points or 0.01%. U.S. stocks climbed to daily record highs almost every day last week, and the S&P 500 posted its fifth consecutive weekly rally, supported by an upbeat earnings season. Strong October jobs data and a positive update on Pfizer's experimental pill against COVID-19. Investors last week also shrugged off the Federal Reserve's decision to start reducing its monthly bond purchases, put in place to support the economy during the COVID-19 scamdemic. Meanwhile, with nearly 90% of the companies in the S&P 500 index having reported quarterly results, earnings are expected to have climbed 41.5% in the third quarter from a year earlier, according to Refinitiv. It says Caterpillar, Boeing, and 3M rose between 0.5% and 3% in pre-market trading after the Congress passed a long-delayed infrastructure bill, hailed by President Joe Biden as a once-in-a-generation investment. Steel and aluminum producers also gained, with Nucor Corp up 2.6% and U.S. Steel Corp adding 4.9%. So flashing forward here, the majority votes for him to sell, which effectively signals that he is going to dump stock in the market, said Russ Mold, investment director at AJ Bell. Investors may look at the situation and try and sell before he does, potentially then buying back at lower prices if they still like the stock. Here are some of the biggest U.S. movers today. Electric vehicle charging stocks jumped in U.S. pre-market trading after the House on Friday passed the biggest U.S. infrastructure package in decades. EV charging company Volta jumps 15% pre-market, EVgo 12%, ChargePoint 7.1%, and Blink 6.9%. Cryptocurrency exposed stocks jump in U.S. pre-market trading with Bitcoin and Ether rising and the global crypto market now worth $3 trillion. Bit Digital up 12%, Riot Blockchain up 11%, Marathon Digital up 11%, MicroStrategy up 7.8%, and Coinbase up 5.3%. U.S.-listed Chinese education stocks, including New Oriental Education and TEL Education, rally in pre-market trading after Dow Jones reported that Beijing plans to issue more than a dozen licenses that would allow companies to offer after-school tutoring, citing people familiar with the matter. NVIDIA extends gains from last week, rising 2.3% in U.S. pre-market trading, and Marin Software rose 12% in extended hours Friday after closing 17% higher during regular trading on Friday. Some other movers out of Europe here today. Darktrace shares rise as much as 12%, the most intraday since September 17th, with Berenberg reiterating its buy rating on the cybersecurity company following a recent site visit. Siemens Gamesa climbs as much as 9.9%, the most intraday since March 2020, with Citi saying the wind turbine maker's results were a mixed bag, but may soothe some concerns for investors. Richmond gains as much as 5.2% to a record after a report that activist investor Dan Loeb's Third Point LLC built a stake in the Swiss luxury goods company, spurring speculation of a shakeup that could boost its lagging stock price. Coloplast rises as much as 6.3%, the most intraday since February, after the Danish medical equipment maker agreed to acquire Atos Medical in a transaction valued at Euro 2.16 billion, including debt. Handelsbanken says the deal is strategic and the valuation seems reasonable. Henkel drops as much as 6.6%, the most intraday since March 2020. The group's new margin guidance implies clear pressure on its second half trading, Citi says in a note. PostNL falls as much as 6.7% after the mail delivery firm posted weaker than expected results for the third quarter, with normalized EBIT missing the average estimate and parcel volumes disappointing analysts. Bouygues declines as much as 5.2% after the French conglomerate agrees to buy Engie's Equans for Euro 7.1 billion, prompting Brian Garnier to downgrade the stock due to what the broker says was a high price tag and integration risk. H&M drops as much as 4.9%, among the biggest decliners in Europe's Stock 600 index on Monday, after being downgraded to sell from neutral at Goldman Sachs, which says the retailer's margins will take a hit from inflation related to the cost of goods sold. Sonova slides as much as 7.3% before pairing drop to 3% as hundreds of patients need to be reoperated due to a late recall of implants. NZZ Am Sontag reported on Sunday based on its own investigation. So aside from that, the market snapshot, S&P 500 futures, little changed at 46.93 and change. Stocks Europe 600, little changed at 43.27. Nikkei down 0.4%, 29.507 and change. Shanghai Composite up 0.2% to 3498.63. Brent futures up 1.3% to 83.78 a barrel. Gold spot down 0.2% to 1814.83 per ounce. U.S. dollar index little changed at 94.24 and euro little changed at 1.1569. Also out of Bloomberg overnight, ECB chief economist Philip Lane called the current period of inflation very unusual and temporary, adding that there are no signs that it is a chronic situation in an interview with Spanish newspaper El Pais. Investor concerns over China Evergrande Group's debt are shifting to the country's stronger property companies as a sell-off across the industry's dollar bonds hits higher quality borrowers. Hedge funds look to have got their timing very wrong, piling into bullish short-term treasuries bets ahead of some of the steepest yield spikes in years. China posted a record monthly trade surplus in October as exports surged, despite global supply chain disruptions. Shares tied to reopening trades from casinos to airlines surged in Asia on Monday after Pfizer Inc. said that its COVID-19 pill could reduce hospitalizations and deaths in high-risk patients by 89%. Over to News Squawk, and still in Asia, Evergrande units bondholders yet to receive coupon payments. Japan New Capitalism panel pushes innovation, SPACs, fairer pay rather. Tesla shipments in China drop as exports from Shanghai jump, and Singapore, Malaysia to launch vaccinated travel lane November 29th. Back over to Europe, the HUT rises after founder hints at taking company private. Credit Suisse says Asia lending back on track after scandals. Mercedes cars get fingerprint payment function and Visa deal. And day-to-day gas deliveries to Europe up to Gazprom, according to the Kremlin. As far as the event calendar today, nothing major scheduled. Central banks, a couple things going on at 9 a.m. Fed's Clarita discusses prospects for monetary policy. 10:30 a.m. Powell to make opening remarks at the Fed Diversity Conference. Noon today, Fed's Bowman discusses U.S. housing market. Also at noon, Fed's Harker speaks to Economic Club of New York. And at 1:50 p.m., Fed's Evans speaks on economy and monetary policy. So, quick breeze through as to what's going on through the markets here today. And as Earnings Whispers brings us this, here are some of the earnings net slated for today. The trade desk before open, Cody, Bell Tower, Viatris, to name a few before Bell. We got PayPal and AMC, the meme stocks net coming up here later on today. And of course, a whole host of others like Palantir and Blink and Yeti and a few others net scattered throughout the week. So certainly keep an eye on that. So, aside from that, through the weekend here, we had lots of good news coming through. Saudis respond to Biden, your energy crisis isn't our problem. And we've talked about old Biden and that pleading with the Saudis and OPEC Plus to try and open up the spigots, as it were. Now, mind you, this just 1 year ago, if you remember right, the U.S. was pretty well energy independent, and yet now we have to beg from our quote-unquote friends across the way to deliver more oil. Seems a little ridiculous, doesn't it? U.S. gas prices at the pump are at $3.42.1, having soared since President Biden was elected, much like they did when President Obama was elected, to some of the highest prices in history. President Biden refuses to take any blame for this. Instead of realizing the climate crisis-focused policies are impacting the fossil fuel supply chain, before the replacements are ready to fill the void, he has blamed COVID and OPEC Plus, driving America to be more dependent on foreign oil rather than increase production domestically. OPEC Plus made it clear this week what exactly they think of President Biden's proclamations by not budging from their oil production plan, and Bloomberg reports that Saudi Energy Minister Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman told reporters, "Oil is not the problem. The problem is the energy complex is going through havoc and hell." Of course, always wanting to signal their virtue and follow the narrative, and amid the farce that is COP26, Democrats have decided that this is the right time to offer a bill that stops banks from financing fossil fuel plans. Senators Edward Markey and Jeff Merkley introduced a bill which would require the Federal Reserve to mandate that major banks stop the financing of projects that emit greenhouse gas emissions. The legislation would prohibit financing of new or expanded fossil fuel projects by 2022 and prohibit the financing of all fossil fuel projects by 2030. It would also prohibit thermal coal financing by 2025, which, of course, will lead to less development, lower supply, and higher prices. So, yes, their Zero Hedge depicts this on Friday. Democrats offer bill to stop banks financing fossil fuel plans. Exxon shareholders right now. Yeah. And finally, if that wasn't enough, shortly after commenting that the Biden administration is very concerned about the price at the pump, here is how Jennifer Granholm, the U.S. Energy Secretary, responded when asked by Bloomberg's Tom Keene how the Biden administration would increase crude production to meet demand and lower gas prices for average Joe.
Let me cut to it if I may. In Sturgis, Michigan, it is $2.89 a gallon. I guess that's better than in California. What is the Granholm plan to increase oil production in America?
Oh my God, that is hilarious. Would that I had the magic wand on this. As you know, of course, oil is a global market. It is controlled by a cartel. That cartel is called OPEC, and they made a decision yesterday that they were not going to increase beyond what they were already planning. So, the interesting thing is, the Department of Energy.
Yeah. Ho, 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 ho. Hilarious, is it? She added, it is not the president's doing that is causing the oil and gas companies right now to decide to slow down. They were slowed down because of COVID. Yeah, right. Not exactly reassuring to Americans whose cost of living is soaring. Javier Blas says, very proud of Bloomberg TV colleagues Tom Keene, Lisa Abramowicz, and Faro TV for absolutely pushing U.S. Energy Secretary on the contradictions of the Biden's energy and climate change policies. And again, mind you, COP26 last week had to fire up the old coal plants just to keep the lights on for their little junket. So there's that. All right, so visualizing congestion at America's busiest port. We've talked a lot about what's going on in LA, Long Beach. Well, just how big of a problem is this? U.S. e-commerce grew by 32.4% in 2020, the highest annual growth rate in over 2 decades. Such rapid growth has resulted in many more goods being imported, leaving America's western ports completely overwhelmed. To help you understand the scale of this issue, visual capitalist Marcus Liu has visualized the number of containers waiting at sea in relation to the Port of Los Angeles daily processing capacity. And so here we have this. Here's the Port of LA. Oh, we got the old bottleneck here. Of course, America's largest port is currently facing a massive bottleneck of shipping containers. And here they have this little guy right here representing one single container. I presume that to be a 20-foot TEU, whichever, doesn't really matter. But if you look at that on the scale of this big red block here, that's 540,000 waiting in harbor. It says on average 29,000 containers arrived each day in September. And this little yellow chunk down here, 18,000 containers loaded per day. So you can kind of see the scale relative to just one, how much of a backlog they actually have. And of course, what's the workaround to that? Well, we'll touch on that here momentarily, but both Florida and Texas are putting some propositions together. It says, stuck at sea. As of November 2nd, 2021, the Port of LA reported that it had 93 vessels waiting in queue. Altogether, these ships have a maximum carrying capacity of roughly 540,000 containers, commonly measured in the 20-foot equivalent units. On the other side of the equation, the port processed 468,059 import containers in September, the most recent data at the time of writing. Because the port does not operate on Sundays, we can conclude that the port can roughly load 18,000 containers each day. That capacity seems unlikely to reduce the congestion. Over a 2-week time frame in September, 407,695 containers arrived at the Port of Los Angeles, which averages to around 29,000 containers arriving each day. So what's being done? Well, solutions are needed to prevent the backlog from causing massive economic harm. In fact, analysts believe that up to $90 billion in trade could be delayed this holiday season. In October, the Biden administration announced a deal to expand operations at the Port of LA, enabling it to run 24/7. The port also announced it will begin charging carriers for every container that sits idle over a grace period. While only temporary, this plan has drawn criticism for its unclear objective. The fee is on the ocean carrier, but the control over when the cargo is to be picked up sits with the cargo recipient. Having the ocean carrier pay more does nothing to encourage the cargo interest to pick up the cargo out of the World Shipping Council. Regardless of the outcome, more permanent solutions will be required as online shopping continues to gain popularity. So again, we'll talk about this here in a couple stories here, but both Texas and Florida are both putting together some prospectuses, as it were. So the Great Reset action item number 4, no meat for you. This was out of Bomb Thrower the other day. Says the most recent edition of the Crypto Capitalist Letter had a section about the COP26 summit that is about to commence in Glasgow. In 1866, Gideon J. Tucker famously opined, "No man's life, liberty, or property are safe while the legislature is in session." The UN's 26th Climate Change Conference of the Parties is happening this week, and I'm bracing myself for the hysteria and generalized idiocy that will emerge from it. There are already experts who are clucking that conspiracy theorists are promulgating the idea that climate lockdowns are on the way. A new report by the Institute for Strategic Dialogue, a global organization tackling extremism and polarization, explains how this conspiracy claims that governments will strip people of their freedoms under the pretext of tackling climate change. Gee, I don't know why people would be led to believe that in the context of what we've just played out through the scamdemic, or just take a look at Australia. Although conceding that it's important to recognize that fear of government overreach or authoritarianism is not in and of itself extremist. The eggheads at ISD fret that it is problematic when public issues are brought into a conspiratorial framework, which implies there are unseen power dynamics at play. In the past, when the world's wealthiest, most influential people, along with the heads of state of the most powerful nation, states wing into Davos aboard their private jets and then re-emerge chanting, "Build back better," like zombies, there's nothing to suspect. Move along. This week, after over 400 private jets shuttled the world's movers and shakers into Glasgow for COP26, the big takeaway coming out of the confab is that it's all about the methane. Everybody knew methane is a greenhouse gas, but now it's a media thing. From here on, it's going to get political. So they go on and say when the methane mantra erupted throughout the corporate media this week, seemingly on cue, I didn't give it too much thought. I was bracing for climate lockdowns. We didn't get those, at least not yet. But thanks to my trusty experts say news alert filter, it soon became apparent to me that what is about to play is likely going to be next. And of course, experts say beef is a bigger contributor of methane emissions. Of course, yep, the cows are at fault. You'll own nothing and be happy. We're all familiar with the World Economic Forum montage depicting 8 predictions for life in 2030. Prediction number 1 was, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Because global Marxism will be running the show. And whatever you want or need, it'll be delivered to your door or your rental unit by drone. And it says, because you'll be on permanent lockdown. And prediction number 4 was, you'll eat much less meat. An occasional treat for the environment and your health. Yes, it says our health in the World Economic Forum video. But if the 5-star menu from COP26 or any Davos shindig shows us, soy patties and bugs aren't on the menu when globalist elites are busily reimagining your future. The COP26 offerings contain some of the most carbon-intense, red-blooded delicacies available. High-grade Scottish haggis, venison, and sounds yummy. According to the WWF, you, need to get the carbon footprint of food down below half a kilogram of CO2 per meal to reach the goals defined in the Paris Agreement, reads a statement on each page of the online menu. You are going to have to ratchet your consumption below half a kilogram of CO2 per meal. The Scottish beef burger on the COP26 menu clocks in at 3.3 kilograms of CO2. By 2030, that's probably going to be the good behavior allotment of meat for you and I for like a whole year. It says, in the Crypto Capitalist Manifesto, which you can get for free when you sign up for the Bomb Thrower mailing list, we reveal what this relentless push for the Great Reset is really about. The messaging coming out of global elites, such as the WEF, the Party of Davos, the International Monetary Fund, and even places as desperate as the Vatican and Hollywood, are all riffing on the same theme. You, the middle class, the lower class, the masses, are going to have to get used to a lower standard of living. The real reason behind this isn't because of climate change or even COVID. It's because of the debt. The world is finally out of runway from kicking the can down the road all those times the global economy threatened to backslide into recession, or when previous monetary bubbles imploded. All those decades of collectively living on credit and borrowing against the future have finally hit the wall. This is it. We're here. The end of the super debt cycle. So it's no coincidence that the metaverse is also a new buzzword of the zeitgeist. If these global elites have their way, then most of the plebeians are going to have to be shoved into VR tubes in their own apartments, where they can be fed a steady diet of intravenous soy protein. Any sundry maintenance expenses will be paid for by UBI, which will, more than anything else, be a CBDC driven social credit system. They'll all be effectively neo-serfs, locked away from taking up space in the real world, which the parasites, they call elites, the top 1% of the 1%, will more or less own lock, stock, and barrel. Says the divergence between the 1% and the 0.01%, and this is using the 2015 data. This all may be aspirational on the part of the Davos crew and terrifying for any of the outsiders who actually notice what is going on. The truth is, we're in the late stage of globalism. But the reality is that we're in the late stage globalism, and the technocratic scaffolding that underpins these machinations is actually in the process of imploding. I've outlined why here, and I'm doing another piece on it shortly. There will be no great reset. There may be a great reject instead. There will be no AI-inspired singularity, but we may get a proverbial Tower of Babel moment instead. The world will not end because of climate change. Nation-states are on the way out. Network states are on the rise. The fiat monetary system is coming to an end, and with it, all linear extrapolations of centralized, top-down governance models will soon become dysfunctional to the point of irrelevance. And let's hope so. Let us absolutely hope so. Obviously, with DJT not in office, they are on an accelerated time frame, and it's all there for everybody to see, if you have eyes to see, right? And they're making mistakes all along the way. So aside from that, as mentioned at the top of the broadcast here, Evergrande back in the news. Obviously, they've got a little debt to pay down here and a bunch of coupons coming due. So, apparently selling a couple of Gulfstream G650 jets to repay their foreign creditors, well, I guess that's a first step. Says after weeks of setbacks in the insolvent company's attempt to liquidate its assets and repay creditors, China Evergrande finally had some success in raising capital when it sold two of its private jets for more than $50 million last month. 50 million. 50 million. Mind you, how many billions are they behind? It's literally chump change. According to the Wall Street Journal, the money from the sale was used to pay a foreign debt coupon and helped avert a default on its U.S. dollar debt. According to Wall Street Journal sources, American aircraft investors bought the planes, both of which were Gulfstream G650 jets. The sales closed in October, the same month that Evergrande made two overdue bond coupon payments, shortly before 30-day grace periods on them expired. Since after the sale, the Shenzhen-based Evergrande likely has at least two more jets it can use to repay debt, according to online records. The company had at least four jets recently and has one more on order. The property developer's private jet fleet is the result of founder and chairman Hui Ka-yan splurge on luxury jets during the company's heyday, which he used to fly himself. Evergrande executives and others around the world and other Chinese conglomerates like the formerly high-flying H&A Group also boasted flashy private jets with luxurious interiors. They're all now bankrupt. And so here's the inside of one of those jets. Says it was designed to transport up to 40 passengers and 12 crew members. Commercial airlines often use Airbus A330 jets to fly more than 250 passengers. And since Evergrande faces billions in upcoming coupon and maturity payments, the airplane will soon have a new owner. And here, as mentioned, Evergrande has got quite a few corporate and interest payments and that coming due, many of which coming up, especially January, February, March time frame all next year. So I guess a couple $50 million planes, yeah, that ought to be enough to cover some billions in interest payments. So we'll see how that unfolds. And as mentioned, Texas, Florida governors pitched shippers to send containers to their ports amid California's log jams. So, as mentioned, the Southern California's top ports is so severe, the congestion, that governors on the other side of the U.S. advertise reports are ready for business and can handle the overflow. Out of Bloomberg, multiple ports across the Gulf Coast and U.S. East Coast are less congested than LA and Long Beach ports. The twin ports are the largest in the Northern Hemisphere and are responsible for 40% of U.S. containerized volume. Currently, 79 vessels are waiting to offload at these ports, causing major supply chain disruptions. In response to the congestion, Texas Governor Greg Abbott launched a new campaign to reroute container ships at backlogged ports in California to the Lone Star State. He tweeted, "Texas ports are open and ready to help fix America's supply chain backlog. We can get goods out faster and at a lower cost than California due to our centralized location."
Are your products stuck off Long Beach? Texas ports are wide open. Port delays are up to 100 days in California. In less than 2 weeks, your cargo can set sail from California and be at one of our 24/7 functioning Texas cargo ports, unloaded and on their way to shelves near you. Choose a state that doesn't see inflation and America's supply chain backlog as a good thing. Escape California. Everyone's doing it. Choose Texas.
Kind of like that. Escape California. So last month, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis called on shippers to reroute their vessels from backlogged West Coast ports to Florida, where the capacity to berth vessels and offload cargo is plentiful. "We have to make sure people can go Christmas shopping as normal. We have to make sure that all the necessities are there," DeSantis said. "And if it's because ships are sitting off the coast somewhere else and they can be rerouted here and we can get all those shelves stocked, then we want to be part of that solution." However, there is a significant obstacle with container ships rerouting from the West Coast. That issue, well, it's time, and we'll add an extra 10 days to the sail to an extra leg through the Panama Canal. But with wait times increasing across the West Coast ports, it could be advantageous to head to other ports. Florida's Port of Jacksonville could be the next best option for carriers, as their facilities are one truck drive away from 100 million consumers. It says if you're trying to move it to this side of the United States and you're parked off the coast of California, those 10 days are now being eaten up, East Coast Florida Ports Council President Michael Rubin said. "They're probably less than what you're paying now." Severe West Coast port congestion could be temporary, reworking containerized flows into the U.S. as overflow may be headed to less clogged terminals. This could be one way to alleviate supply chain disruptions that have resulted in surging inflation and product shortages nationwide. So, again, if we take a look at the old ports in question here, we'll refresh this here. Obviously, you still see quite the backlog and logjam of container ships. All the little green dots are the container ships. The reds are like fuel vessels and things of that nature. But still quite a jam up, if you want to call it that, backlog, whichever, in Long Beach, LA. And of course, you're starting to see a lot of these green dots with arrows pointing south, which looks like at this point many are indeed heading for the old Panama Canal down here. And of course, you can see them snaking their way through, working their way up through and around the Gulf of Mexico. A lot of red vessels and that, fuel carrying and whatnot up into Texas. Maybe we'll start to see an influx of green here before long. Who knows? So, that being said, the global elite are fearing a rebellion is brewing, says CEO of large doomsday bunker builder. That's out of Max Slavo's SHTF plan over the weekend. So, according to the CEO of one of the world's largest doomsday bunker builders for the parasites, those who are in power currently fear a rebellion of those who they are ruling over. Ron Hubbard, CEO of Atlas Survival Shelters, while being interviewed by the Canadian Prepper, tells us right away the bunker building business is exploding as the parasites begin to fear the masses waking up. Says, "We know we are slaves, and those who have followed this blog know we aren't losing freedom, but we never had freedom. What we are losing is the illusion that we are free. But the rest of humanity is finally waking up and evolving past needing masters to enslave them and steal the fruits of their labor. This is a good thing. But we also know the rulers will not go down easily. As year 2021 winds down, however, the doomsday bunker business is picking up, and those who are buying these bunkers are the ones currently fearing the Great Awakening or the apocalypse, the lifting of the veil. They fear people finally realizing that they were born into slavery. Hubbard warns that one reason this is happening now is that the globalists believe a rebellion is brewing in America, and likely very near, with the American people growing increasingly angry with the entire establishment and those who control it. The system is failing. People are evolving mentally, and many know they were not meant to be slaves. I'll come back to this here momentarily. Says what the elites want is massive chaos and division, which is why we are divided in every way possible. If we cannot get along and work together, they will achieve their goal. The parasites are almost exclusively building bunkers right now because they're the ones that can afford it, Hubbard says in the video. America is within days, if not weeks, of a rebellion. There is panic buying of bunkers right now, especially in the United States. He says it isn't just in the United States either. This whole spirit of liberty and freedom from government has gone global. They know they are losing control, and all it'll take is massive non-compliance, and people realizing they were not born to be slaves to any ruling class. We do not have to make this a violent rebellion, and even Hubbard admits that this won't necessarily be a violent rebellion, but it will happen. As people face losing their jobs and everything they spent years working for, they will have no choice but to wake up to what is really going on. Now, mind you, this came out, and of course, this week, the 8th through the 11th here, there is the global walkout. We talked about that last week. There are some upcoming dates in that as well, I believe, on the 19th and 20th, as well as the 26th, but this is going to be the real test, I think, from today through the 11th to see whether or not this thing has legs, but we'll let a little of this play through.
Are the elites building bunkers right now?
The elites are almost exclusively the ones building the bunkers because they can afford it.
So you're telling us right now that the bunker under Denver Airport exists?
It exists. America is just within days, if not weeks, of a rebellion. There is a panic buy on bunkers right now, especially in the United States. But it's not just the USA, it's gone global.
So that's just a little snippet of it. Apparently it's about 20 minutes in length. I'll drop the link here at the conclusion of the broadcast if you want to watch the rest of that. But aside from that, truckload of high-end video cards was stolen in California as chip shortage continues. So as if the global supply chain issues aren't enough, now we got people stealing semiconductors and everything else. The global semiconductor shortage, supply chain delays, and booming interest in cryptocurrency mining have sparked massive demand for graphics cards, resulting in sky-high prices. Due to scarcity and high prices, criminals are waking up to the new silicon gold graphics cards. So, it comes as no surprise an entire truckload of graphics cards was stolen in Southern Cali. News about the theft originated on EVGA Corporation's website last week. EVGA is a U.S. computer hardware company that produces the NVIDIA video cards. Product manager Jacob Freeman wrote a blog that read, "Please take notice that on October 29, 2021, a shipment of EVGA GeForce RTX 30 series graphics cards was stolen from a truck en route from San Francisco to our Southern California distribution center. These graphics cards are in high demand, and each has an estimated retail value starting at $329.99 up to $1,959.99, manufacturer's suggested retail price. Freeman didn't disclose which graphics cards were stolen or quantity. He emphasized that it's both a criminal and civil offense under state and federal law to conceal, sell, withhold, or aid in concealing, selling, or withholding the stolen video cards. The thieves could list the graphics cards on eBay or social media marketplaces. so it's essentially impossible to buy a GPU from a legit source, and you therefore have to buy them off eBay or some other marketplace if you don't want to wait 8 to 12 months. And now, if you buy an EVGA card, there's a chance that it's stolen, and you'll receive no support. I hate thieves immensely, but I feel sorry for anyone that buys one of these all excited only to find out this after the fact, said one person on the EVGA forum. An alarming problem we see is that unsuspecting people might purchase one of these stolen graphics cards and upon registering be flagged by EVGA and confronted by the police. How nice. So yes, if you happen to shop on eBay or use any social media marketplaces like Facebook Marketplace, as it were, be wary of any graphics cards, I suppose, and that is the EVGA GeForce RTX 30 series, apparently. So there's that. Seems like it just gets worse and worse. And last but not least, by way of some financial related stuff on the morning, says got milk. The old cow juice prices are soaring amid higher feed costs and smaller herds. So soaring supermarket prices might not seem like a big issue for the top 10% of Americans who enjoyed a period of asset price inflation, thanks to the old Federal Reserve. But for the working poor who don't own assets and are stuck in a renting society, every single price increase for food is eating away at their real wages. Add milk to the long list of foods that are getting more expensive at supermarkets across the country. Bloomberg reports retail prices for a gallon of milk are up 26% at $3.59 since bottoming at $2.84 in July of 2018. Says there are several factors at work pushing milk prices higher. First, the number of dairy cows has collapsed to the lowest in a decade, which crimps output. Foreign dairy producers, such as major ones in the European Union, New Zealand, and Australia, are also experiencing declining outputs. On top of this all, the cost to feed dairy cows and operate a dairy farm is becoming more expensive thanks to soaring commodity prices, suggesting prices will continue to rise well into 2022. For the average household, dozens of gallons of milk are purchased each year, and for the working poor, every incremental price increase adds up. But it's not just milk and dairy products that are on the rise. Almost every product at the grocery store has jumped in the past year. For example, meat prices, boneless chuck roast, have risen 28% in the last year. Much of the increases are due to the knock-on effect of rising commodity prices, labor shortages, shipping congestion, and increased transportation costs. This week, it was reported that Oreo cookies, Ritz crackers, and Sour Patch Kids are the next supermarket items to get more expensive. John Castamatidis, the billionaire supermarket owner of Gristedes and D'Agostino Foods, warned not too long ago that Nabisco, PepsiCo, and Coca-Cola will be raising prices in the near term. He told Fox News, I see over 10% price increases in the next 60 days, adding that the trend will not drop anytime soon. The list of food and beverages experiencing price hikes goes on, and prices might continue to soar as the UN's Food and Ag Organization's Global Food Price Index hit a new high last month. And there we see that. It says inflation doesn't stop at the supermarket but continues at the fuel station, where gas prices have jumped to 7-year highs. And again, inflation is a poisonous monster slithering through the economy and also pushing shelter costs higher. So there we see gas prices. And of course, compared with 1 year ago, tens of millions of Americans are allocating more of their paychecks to food, energy, and shelter. To show how inflation is causing discontent, why Dems can no longer ignore soaring prices, and how it's crushed real wages of the working poor. The infographic below pretty much sums up how Americans are feeling about the president. So here we see the Biden approval rating sinking on top of the FAO Global Food Price Index and gasoline futures inverted, all going down. So, add milk to the long list of items inflating away and likely moving higher in the next year. The Biden administration has to stop downplaying inflation and tackle it at its core, rather than sounding like a broken record player, just like the Federal Reserve, saying that inflation is transitory. But again, we talked about an article last week saying that perhaps this is always the plan. always been their plan. They love to see misery. They don't want to see full shelves. They don't want to see affluence. They don't want to see you and I doing well. That is not in their best interests. So what is the incentive for them to lift a finger and do a damn thing? Nothing. They absolutely love what they see playing out. So, in other news, Israeli leaders reject Biden's consulate plan. Jerusalem is the capital of Israel alone. And of course, this looks to be something that Biden is trying to undo that DJT had worked through here during his presidency. Says the Biden administration's plan to reopen a consulate in Jerusalem that previously served as a de facto embassy to the Palestinian Authority has placed the U.S. in the middle of the two parties on arguably the most sensitive unresolved issue between them, sovereignty over Jerusalem. Amid growing opposition in Congress to the admin's proposal, Israel Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, political rivals who, under a power-sharing arrangement, have agreed to rotate the premiership, both made clear at their weekend their strong opposition to the consulate plan. Says there is no place for an American consulate that serves the Palestinians in Jerusalem, Prime Minister Naftali Bennett told reporters during a joint press conference with Foreign Minister Yair Lapid on Saturday night. We have expressed our position to the administration determinedly, quietly, without drama, and I hope it will be understood, Bennett said. Jerusalem is the capital of Israel alone. Lapid said the U.S. would be welcome to open a consulate in Ramallah, the city some 12 miles north of Jerusalem, where Mahmoud Abbas, his PA, is headquartered. And foreign governments with diplomatic missions in Ramallah include Australia, China, Cyprus, Czech Republic, Denmark, Finland, Netherlands, Poland, Russia, and South Africa. But in response to the remarks by Bennett and Lapid, the PA made equally clear that it will accept nothing less than a reopening of a U.S. consulate in Jerusalem. The U.S. administration has affirmed its continued commitment to reopening its consulate in East Jerusalem, and we were officially notified of that, Abbas's spokesman, Nabil Abu Rabadani, said on Sunday. We are waiting for this to be implemented soon. Any Israeli attempts to obstruct the reopening of the consulate are rejected, he added. The PA Foreign Ministry characterized the issue as a critical test for the Biden administration. The credibility of the positions of the U.S. admin and the international community are being tested, it said in a statement. It is high time for the international community to take the lead in respecting its obligations and assume its legal and moral responsibility towards the occupation and settlements, and to stop its miserable trust in the Israeli government. So we'll break from that there. I think we kind of get the idea where this is headed, and we'll have to see how this shakes out as well. So aside from that, out of Epoch Times here, gunmaker Smith & Wesson breaks ground on Tennessee home after relocating over firearm manufacturing legislation. So a little firearm news on the day. Gunmaker Smith & Wesson broke ground on her new home in East Tennessee last week, alongside several state and local leaders, just weeks after announcing the decision to move. The American manufacturer of firearms, ammunition, and restraints, which was founded in 1852, currently has corporate headquarters in Springfield, Massachusetts. The company is investing more than $125 million to relocate its headquarters and some operations from Springfield to Blount County in Tennessee, a move that will create 750 jobs in the area, it said. The groundbreaking ceremony took place on Friday at Partnership Park North in Blount County, which is 240 acres in size and will house both the company's headquarters and manufacturing operations, according to local reports. Mark Smith, president and CEO of Smith & Wesson, said he was looking forward to the move, but noted that it was not an easy decision to make, owing to the fact that it had to be the right decision for today and future generations to come. Announcing the decision in September, Smith said, "This has been an extremely difficult and emotional decision for us. But after an exhaustive and thorough analysis for the continued health and strength of our iconic company, we feel that we have been left with no other alternative." The move comes following legislation recently proposed in Massachusetts that, if enacted, would prohibit the company from manufacturing certain firearms that are illegal to use in Massachusetts. Sponsored by Cambridge Rep. Marjorie Decker, Lawrence Rep. Frank Moran and Senator Cynthia Cream. The legislation was filed in April and would put a ban on the manufacturing of any assault weapon or large capacity feeding device in the state, unless it's for the sole purpose of selling to law enforcement or military agencies. These bills would prevent Smith & Wesson from manufacturing firearms that are legal in almost every state in America and that are safely used by tens of millions of law-abiding citizens every day exercising their constitutional Second Amendment rights, protecting themselves and their families, and enjoying the shooting sports, said Smith. While Smith & Wesson remains hopeful that the legislation will not be passed, the company noted that the ban on firearms manufacturing would affect up to over 60% of its 2020 revenue. So bottom line, looks like things are going well. Not an easy decision to make, but basically Massachusetts kind of forced her hand. And I think hopefully it ends up being the right decision for them and in a more free and fair state, probably a red state like Tennessee. So last but not least on the morning, we get this. Experts, massive solar storms may cause global internet outages, out of Insider Paper here today. So if by chance you experience some internet issues here today, well, perhaps maybe this is to blame. Says solar storms, also known as coronal mass ejections, are known to damage electrical grids and cause blackouts. However, experts believe they could also negatively affect internet infrastructure, resulting in global internet outage. Sangeetha Abdu-Jyothi of the University of California, Irvine, revealed this last week at the SIGCOMM 2021 Data Communication Conference. In her research, she revealed that while local and regional internet infrastructure would be at low risk of damage during extreme solar storms because they mostly use fiber optic cables that are not affected by geomagnetically induced events, even short cable runs that are vulnerable to these storms are grounded on a regular basis, removing the possibility of damage. Undersea cables that connect continents, on the other hand, are a different story. Even though most of these continents are linked by fiber optic cables, the repeaters that amplify the current at regular intervals are highly susceptible to failure. And if most of these repeaters on a network fail, it could be enough to cause an internet blackout in a specific nation that relies solely on internet from undersea cables. Abdu-Jyothi said in a conversation with Wired, "What's really got me thinking about this is that the pandemic we saw how unprepared the world was. There was no protocol to deal with it effectively, and it's the same with internet resilience. Our infrastructure is not prepared for a large-scale solar event. We have very limited understanding of what the extent of the damage would be. One of the main reasons for this fear is the limited amount of data we have at our disposal. Severe solar storms have previously been recorded, including those that occurred in 1859, 1921, and 1989. Even though power grids did not exist during the 1859 event, historical literature reveals that these storms caused compass needles to swing uncontrollably, and many saw the aurora borealis, an occurrence seen only at our planet's poles, in Colombia, at the equator. The most recent solar storm, which occurred in 1989, knocked out the Hydro-Quebec power grid, resulting in a 9-hour power outage in northeast Canada. And, after decades of low solar storm activity, experts are concerned that we are on the verge of another massive solar storm. Abdu-Jyothi added, "There are no models currently available of how this could play out. We have more understanding of how these storms would impact power systems, but that's all on land. In the ocean, it's even more difficult to predict." So, very interesting. All of this stuff playing out here. And of course, as if we don't have enough to worry about, perhaps we may have to endure through perhaps a solar storm of some sort. So the bottom line, what's the takeaway out of all this today? Just be prepared. Get your stuff in order. Get all the things you need, not necessarily the things you want, but the things you need for survival. And just flat out be prepared. So that's going to do it for the broadcast here this morning. Appreciate you guys tuning in as always, and we'll see you back here tomorrow. Take care. God bless everybody.